Hi, everyone. I'm Jeanette, and I run the Linus Roache fans Facebook group. Sorry, I'm nervous. Um,
No, no need to be.
uh, take two, no. Along with the Twitter and Instagram accounts of the same name. With me is Cindy, one of the Facebook group mods, and we are joined by. Look at, I can't do this. Okay.
No, you're doing great. Honestly, I'm no good at public speaking and all this stuff, so don't even worry about
And
it.
you should be.
Well, anyway, I'm very happy to be here. So,
Thank you. Anyway, sorry, we're joined with the one and only Linus Roache.
oh,
Linus, Cindy and I would like to thank you for giving us this incredible opportunity to chat with you today. We know your
no.
time is valuable and we appreciate your willingness to join us. I'll give you a little background information regarding how this all came about. I was introduced to your work through a friend who showed me Law and Order to begin with.
Mhm.
And the second thing I ever watched of yours was actually the Ten Commandments.
Okay,
Uh, it was around Easter time, so they were showing that on,
okay.
and you
Yeah,
happened to be on. So, um,
that was a fun job. Yeah.
and from there, I was immediately a fan. I, thought you were very talented as an actor, and I was drawn to exploring your work. And as I watched everything I could get my hands on. But then I noticed that there wasn't much of an online presence for you. So in 2018, I created the Facebook group to keep fans and followers up to date with everything I could find. In the 6 years since, we have over 1,200 followers between the three platforms.
Wow.
So it's been a
Oh,
labor of love, and I love
oh,
that I'm able to do that. And when people submitted their questions, they were very grateful that
oh.
you were willing to do this for them as well.
Well, I'm very grateful to you, Jeanette, for doing that. You see, I've not really had an online presence. I've never been much for social media. I don't know, it just wasn't my thing. So I kind of ignored it. And then I didn't realize that this was going on in the background. I knew there were a few fake ones because
There
I've
are.
had a couple of people got scammed. Actually, one woman wrote to me she got scammed off a fake site. So anyway, I'm very grateful to you and to you both for doing that, and it's a great pleasure to be here. And let's see if we can make more of this and do something again in the future. I'd be very happy to
Thank you.
participate. So, thank you again.
You're welcome. I'll hand it over to Cindy now. She has a few little questions for you, I think, too.
Mm,
Great. Sure. Thank you, Jeanette. So as Jeanette said, my name is Cindy Demopoulos, and I'm one of the mods of the Linus Roache Fans Facebook group. And again, it's so nice to meet you. And as Jeanette said, thank you for taking the time to do this.
mm,
She and I have been talking about doing this on and off for about 6 months. And
okay.
then right after the Welcome to Valhalla event in July, we started
Yeah.
getting a little bit more serious about it. And then we looped in Tyler, and well, here we
Right.
are. So
Right.
we're really grateful to Tyler for facilitating this, and we probably owe him like a bottle of wine or something. So a little background about me is I'm a Law and Order diehard. I've been watching it since September 1990. I remember when you joined the show. And
Yeah.
then when we were working from home during the pandemic, I'd had the TV on in the background, and I found Law and Order on a few different channels, and it restarted my love for the show and my
Mm,
interest in you.
mm,
I looked to see if you had an online presence, and then I found Jeanette's fan sites and started to engage with her. And she and
mm.
I become friends over the past couple of years, and here we are.
Oh,
So,
wonderful.
anyway, I
Have
thought
you
before we
guys have you guys actually met in person
no,
yet? Or,
we
no,
have
you
not yet.
okay. Online buddies. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I thought before we get started with the fan questions, we'd start off with a little warm up, like how you're supposed to stretch when you run, before you run. So I thought we'd do a quick brain stretch. So I have a few rapid fire, this or that preference questions in hopes of getting to know you a little better. So,
Okay. Mm,
and
yeah.
please feel free again to elaborate on your answers. So if you are ready, we'll get going. All right.
I better be ready. Okay.
Okay. First question. What is your preference? Real Christmas tree or fake Christmas tree?
Real Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Always.
You,
Yeah. But we do have a fake one that's kind of fun and chintzy and glitzy, but it's kind of there for fun. But we always love a real Christmas tree.
yeah.
And we try to get one that actually touches the ceiling as well. So
Yeah. I grew up with real Christmas trees, love them, had them growing up. But then
yeah.
when I got my own place in the building that I'm in, having to go out and buy one, then figuring out how to get rid of it when you're in a building that has certain dates and stuff, it was kind of a pain in the neck. So I have a pre-lit one, so I'm a little lazy, but I have some fabulous ornaments that I like. So I use those when I set my tree up. So, all right. Second question. I know you fly a lot for both work and personal. When you fly, what is your preference? Aisle seat or window seat?
Well, it varies.
Okay.
I will nearly always go for an aisle, but if it's a red eye, and I'm not in, posh class, and I'm
Yeah.
paying for it myself, I'll take the window because then I can sleep against the window.
Yeah, that's how I usually am on a high fly. But as I've been flying a lot over these past few years for business, especially if I have to change planes,
Yeah.
that extra 3 seconds you get for not having to wait for your row to empty out and you have to catch the next one.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Next preference. British rock bands, Rolling Stones or The Who?
Well, I love both. Probably more Stones.
That's what Jeanette said when I was going through these.
Probably more Stones, but I did really grow up with The Who, and I got to work with Roger Daltrey one time, which was, amazing on a radio play.
Oh,
And
cool.
he was very cool. So yeah, probably the Stones.
Yeah.
But
Have you ever seen them in concert?
I have. I saw them perform. Bruce Springsteen appeared that night, and Lady Gaga showed up, and John Mayer.
Nice.
It was a great night at the Barclays Center in
in Brooklyn.
Yeah, in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Very cool. Related to that, since you grew up in Manchester, Oasis or Blur?
Oasis, but I didn't really grow up in Manchester. I was there for a period of time. My dad still lives there, and I had a sort of short period of my childhood there, and I would visit him. So I've always got a strong connection with the North. But yeah, I think Oasis, yeah. And I got to meet Liam as well. I was doing a movie up there, and he was going out with Patsy Kensit at the time, and he came to the set. And my dad, for those, a lot of people probably don't know this, my dad's quite a famous TV actor in the UK, and he's been on the show for 60 years. But anyway, Liam walked in, he saw me, and he came straight up to me and he said, "How's your dad?"
Oh, that's sweet.
Very Liam.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Another one. Food preference, sweet or savory?
Used to be sweet, but I'm savory.
Okay. Very good. Interesting. All right. So for this next one, I know you, like me, are a big fan of The Godfather. My all-time favorite movie. I watch it every time I see that it's on, regardless of the day or the time or what it's on. It's The Law. So who was your Vito Corleone preference, Marlon Brando or Robert De Niro?
Well, I mean, it's got to be Brando.
Yeah.
But then it's a bit, you can't really put the two together. I mean, what De Niro did to play the younger version of him was extraordinary. So it was like its own thing. And I love that homage he did when he does the killing, when he actually makes the Brando face. But yeah, it's got to be Brando. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's a wonderful show. Which network is it on now? On
Paramount Plus, The Offer, right? I have not
Offer.
seen that. That's the only reason I would get Paramount Plus is to watch that show.
Well, just sign up for 7 days and then watch that, because it's so much fun and it's so well done. We all know the story and the movie got made, but the drama of the making of it, they really capture it, and it's quite an insight into how. Yeah.
The way I look at it, I prefer Marlon Brando as well, but that's his role. Like that's what he's known for. Robert De Niro has so many other things, and while he was excellent in it, when you hear Robert De Niro, you think, Taxi Driver or Mean Streets or something. You don't think, but when you think Marlon Brando, 9 times out of 10, people think The Godfather.
Yeah. Well, you see, for me as a young actor growing up, Brando, Clift, and Dean were the 3 sort of heroes that me and my friends worshipped. And so we were into like On the Waterfront and East of Eden for Dean. And so I was well aware of Brando. It wasn't just The Godfather for me, but that was an extraordinary thing that he did, because it was a real transformation, the physical transformation that he did. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, last one.
Okay.
Now, I know you said you weren't there that long, but I'm going to throw out a Premier League question for you. Man City or Man United?
Oh, it's Man United, and it's a bit of a story there, actually, because I grew up most of my time in London, and I was an Arsenal supporter.
Mhm.
And then I didn't really follow the football religiously. I just didn't wasn't that into it. I played it a bit as a kid, but then I got to do a movie called Best about George Best, who was, one of the sort of heroes of Man United. And we got to shoot a scene inside Old Trafford
Oh, wow.
at 5 minutes before kickoff with a full capacity crowd. And I remember waiting in the bums there to go on to do this scene. There were four of us walking out in the center of the pitch. And there was David Beckham. Like he looked like a kid, just knocking the ball around. And that whole experience of filming there, I fell in love with Man United. And they call it the Field of Dreams.
Right.
Stadium. And I kind of got hooked. So I left Arsenal and went for Man U.
Don't
When I
tell
was
Liam.
coming up, yeah.
Don't tell Liam. Yeah.
When I was coming up with these questions, like I reached out to a friend of mine who's a big Premier League fan, and I said, "Is it like in New York, you have the Yankees or the Mets, and like well, Jeanette lives in Chicago, the White Sox or the Cubs. You're only a fan of one. You're not a fan of the other." And he goes,
Yeah.
"It's more like the Red Sox and the Yankees, like they hate each other.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it's like a big rivalry in the same city." So
Yeah. Football is a very tribal sport in
yeah,
England.
I
It's
know.
really quite intense. I mean,
Yeah.
I only follow the Euros, to be fair. I do not follow the Premier League. I'll just follow the Euro Cup. So this summer, the Euro Cup, I loved it. I was very involved in that. And then I'll watch the World Cup. And I watch a bit of Copa America, but I won't. Yeah, it means getting up at like 6 a.m. to watch the matches.
Are you going to try and go to the World Cup when it's here in a couple of years?
Gosh, that's a good idea.
2026. So
Yeah, that's a great
they're
idea.
playing games here. I think they're playing games in Chicago.
Okay.
And I believe, well, obviously they're playing at Giants Stadium, well, whatever the Giants play.
It's great. We should start booking our tickets. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, well, that's all I had. So that was fun, and thank you
Fun.
for coming along. So I'm going to hand this back to Jeanette, and she can get started with the questions that we received. So Jeanette, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Cindy. Our first question is from Hannah B. She's originally from New Orleans, but now she lives in Forest Park, Illinois, not too far from me, actually. And she asks, Linus, did you and David Dawson ever get the chance to discuss Tony Warren while filming or promoting My Policeman? Were you able to, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Were you able to see David play Tony in the wonderful and perfectly cast film, The Road to Coronation Street? She says she's a huge admirer of both you and Tony Warren, and she thinks he would have thought My Policeman was a beautiful film. And thanks so much for taking the time for your fans.
Oh, that's well, obviously, Hannah's very well educated on Coronation Street, and Tony Warren is such a hero. And I had the privilege of meeting him many times as a youngster and even being in that show. And yes, David and I did talk about it. And I met David when he was doing it because my half brother, who's quite a bit younger than me, he plays my dad in The Road to Coronation Street.
Does he really?
Right.
So he plays the young Ken Barlow, William Roache. And so at that time, I remember I came over to the UK and I'd said to my dad, why don't we just see if we can get a story going with my dad, me, and my brother in Coronation Street? And he pitched it to the producers, and they said, that's great. And we managed to fit it in the summer when I was off Law and Order before I went back. And so we were shooting that at the same time as my brother Will was going off and doing The Road to Coronation Street. So we were all there around the same time. So yes. And do you know what, though? I have not seen the finished production because no one got me a copy of it. So I have never seen the full movie of The Road to Coronation Street. But David and I did talk about it quite a bit.
Cool.
It is cool.
And Tony would have loved that movie. You're absolutely right. He would have really appreciated My Policeman. Yeah.
It's a good movie.
Wonderful.
Our next question is from Helen T. She's from South Carolina. And she says, happy, very belated 60th birthday. And her question is, if you could earn a living doing anything other than acting, what would you do?
I suppose it doesn't really answer the question because it's about earning money. But if I could have another talent, it would be as a singer. I just, when the human voice is singing at its best, whether it's a rock singer or even an opera singer, but there's something about the expression of the human soul through the voice. If I could have, I can sing, and I pulled it off a couple of times, but I'm not a singer, I can't do that. But so that would be the talent that I wish I had. If I could earn money doing something else, I used to say it would be being a picture framer. I've no idea why, because I just thought it was quite a simple thing to do. But it's also, it adds beauty to something, and there's an
Yeah.
art to it. And I remember once when I was getting very stressed out with the business, and I thought maybe I should just be a picture framer,
No.
because it's quite clear how you need to do that, and that would be a cool
Yeah.
thing to do. But I probably will find another answer will pop up soon, but those are the two that come to mind.
It's a good one. Now I have a question. You've worked in just about every genre of film, from drama to action, war films and period pieces, sci-fi and Western, and even animation. What's something you haven't done yet, but you would like to? I would love to see you in some huge blockbuster type film, like the Marvel franchise or Harry Potter or something like that. And then
Yeah.
would that be something you'd be interested in, or do you kind of shy away from that?
I don't shy away from it. I mean, I did my little bit in Batman, I suppose, so I sort of entered that world a little bit. And Chronicles of Riddick was a weird sci-fi thing. It's got a sort of cult following now, but that has its own thing. And Mandy's its own weird thing. So I've always
Yeah.
been a little bit not going down the sort of main road of the zeitgeist of movies. I suppose I've always been a little tangential, and I appreciate the Marvel movies. And of course, if one came my way, I would do it. I kind of feel they've had their moment. I feel like they're at the end of their era, and I think we're moving back to real dramas again. And I think that's a good move. And it's not that I don't like them. I just think we've had enough of the CGI.
Yeah.
But if there was, funny enough, was it last year I was on Billy the Kid? It was a TV show, but that was the first time I'd done a Western properly, and I'd always wanted to do a Western, but I was playing an Englishman in a Western, so I suppose I've still got a Western to do properly with a drawl.
We hope so.
But yeah, I don't think I have any. I have a sort of a role I still would like to play. I've liked roles where I'm pushed and it's outside of my comfort zone. And I've had the luxury of playing a few what I call savants or geniuses, like Van Gogh. I played when I was very young, or Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the great poet, slightly mad geniuses. But I love the idea of playing a genius because I'm not one. So I'd like to really explore the mind of one. So that's something I'd like to do.
Two things related to that. One, what about comedy?
Good question. I did a comedy in Australia called Siam Sunset.
Yeah, I saw that.
But in a way, I was the straight man in the comedy.
Yes.
I had to be the straight guy, but I still had to play it, with an edge of comedy. But yes, you've answered it for me. That would be a good push for me because I've always just gone straight for the drama.
And two, you said you always want to play a mad genius. Look, we always have like these conversations either on the Facebook group or on Reddit or whatever. And it's like, if you could see Linus in any role, what would you like to see him in? And I said, if they or when they ever reboot the James Bond franchise, Q. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, well, Rafe is busy.
Q is kind of the genius guy with the stuff, right?
Right.
That
would be very nice. But I think Rafe's taken that spot for now, so he's busy doing it.
He was with the old cast, right? Because now they're going to bring in a new James Bond, right? Because Daniel Craig retired, so they might start the whole thing over again. So
I would imagine.
I'm just throwing that out there. Just
I imagine they'll keep the consistency. They did when they went from, was it Pierce Brosnan to Daniel Craig? Yeah, they kept Judi Dench, and there's the continuity of that to tie it together. But anyway, that's a very nice thought. Yes.
It's my 2 cents for whatever it's worth. So.
Okay. The next few questions are Law and Order related.
Okay.
Cindy K would like to know, what was your favorite Law and Order episode to film?
Gosh, I have to admit that after 64 episodes, some of them started to blur a little bit. But I remember a few, and there was one we did. It was basically, I mean, it was a really impossible scenario, but it was really about the torture crimes in Guantanamo, and they'd found a way to tell a
Yes,
story about that and
yes,
put it in a New York. And so it was really the writers were just, I suppose, finding a way to express their political and
yeah.
humanitarian views on it. And I remember seeing my summation, and it was quite a long one.
It was
And
fabulous.
the writer called me up and he said, "You have to act like your pants and your hair are on fire because I want every single word of this in the time." Because, Law and Order is a very tight show. It's really only 40 minutes, if that.
Yeah,
And summations can last half a day or 3 days. So he jammed this and he said, "You've got to get it all in." So I remember like working my butt off to try and get all that in. And I do also remember, as a sort of tangent to that, there were some times when there were issues that were coming up that were quite thorny and political, and we would almost argue about them a little bit, or we would have trouble with the script. I remember Sam Waterston saying sometimes those are the best shows because we were more invested in it and we were sort of arguing amongst ourselves what's true, what's right, what's appropriate, and actually had a stake, if you like, in the argument. And I remember a few of those on some big issues. They were fun because they weren't as safe. It wasn't just a slam dunk chunk chunk, it was it was a difficult topic. And I like that about the show. I really like the fact that we were dealing with stuff that was very close to the news, and we could actually debate stuff on television.
yeah.
That's good.
That summation and the one with the riot, the rumble,
Yes.
right? The two
Yeah.
of those, it
Yeah.
was, that's where your theater background came. And I could totally tell. And I was like, I can't picture. It was just, both of them, I really, really thought were fabulous. So,
I think you're right that the theater background thing really was where I felt so at home in the courtroom.
yeah.
And I looked because it was always Fridays were court days.
Mhm.
They always shoot in one direction, then they do us first as the DAs and the prosecutors, and then they turn around on the witnesses on the stand and the judge. So it was always that way round, and I always looked forward to Friday mornings, like coming in fully prepped for all of these cross examinations, and it was the closest thing to being on stage. And I think you're right. That's partly why
Yeah.
I love it.
It
Yeah.
shows. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
I will tell you though, as an adjunct to that little story, though, when I got the job, um, which I really, it's funny because I walked away from television so many times. It was like I didn't really want to do it, and then suddenly I moved to America, and this strange situation. And suddenly this show actually felt like this is actually a really good thing for me to do. I'd love to do this, so I had to audition for it. I had to test for it, and I think there were three actors went in that day, one after each other. And I remember the test really clearly, and Dick Wolf was hiding behind the set, and I felt good about what I did. But I remember after I got the job, they sent me off to Center Street in New York to shadow some prosecutors and actually sort of learn what their routine is like, what their day is like, and sit in on some cases. And I sat in on some extraordinary cases. And I remember, I won't tell the story of this case because it would take hours to tell you, but it was a very intense murder trial that had already happened, and they were having a sort of revisit of the sentencing of this guy. And I sat in on it, and I remember at the end of it, I just had chills because I was like, this is real. I'm play acting, having a good time, trying to win a case, and it's all fun. But this is real life. The stakes are extremely high, and these people are dealing with really heavy stuff. And I just had so much admiration and respect for these people that do this for a living. And yes, there's a thrill that they get from it, but more than that, there's real justice at stake, and they really stand for it. And so I came out with huge. I remember coming back that day, having a shower, trying to get rid of all of the sort of intensity of the day, and then going, I'm so glad I'm just acting this.
Yeah.
True. Okay. Next question is from Barbara Zambrisky. Hope I said her name right. And she's from New York. And
Uh-huh.
she asks, were you asked to return for the reboot of Law and Order?
Well, it's funny she asked. There was a moment there where Dick and I talked about me coming back, and it might still happen, but I don't know in what form. I mean, I think I'll be Mike Cutter, but I don't know what Mike Cutter's actually doing at this point. I had an
Right.
idea for something, but I think we still need to have that conversation. So watch this space.
Excellent.
Exciting.
Love to hear that. It's not the same without you, I have to say.
Oh, but you know, my good friend Hugh Dancy is
Oh,
playing the role, and I love him. We did Homeland together,
yes.
and he's such a great actor. So they got a great man to step in, and Sam got to stay on for a little while, and now Tony
I'll
Goldwyn's in. So Dick really knows what he's doing with that show. So I
say
try.
the one thing that about the reboot that it kind of bothers me or whatever. It's quiet. Like, and I know this is probably budget dictated, but like when they would have the cops and the lieutenant in the squad room, and there was people walking around and papers and phones ringing, and then they would do the scenes, the arraignment scenes. There was always like people screaming in the background or whatever. And now it's like
Really? I haven't.
nothing. And I'm just like, wait, well, I think it's because I watch all the old ones at the same time. And I'm like, where's that's what made it so great. It was so real and like noisy. And I know a lot of that has to do with probably hiring extras and getting space and all that stuff, possibly. But it's quiet.
That's a
And
very interesting observation. I only saw the sort of premiere episode when it came out, so I just wanted to check in and see how it's doing. I didn't notice that at the time, but that's an interesting observation. I know that Dick was uh, he was very committed to keeping the sets that we had, and I don't know how
yes,
much of those they've kept, but it was like you were never allowed a new lick of paint on anything because he
yes,
wanted the shows to be kind of timeless, to exist that you could watch a show from the 90s or from the
yeah.
noughties and you could still relate to it in the same environment. So there was a kind of rugged authenticity, to your point, I do remember there being a lot of people on the set, and it was nice. It was a good feeling. Yeah.
You
It's
want to
funny
laugh.
that you mentioned, sorry.
One of the first episodes of the reboot, some eagle-eyed people caught this and I rewatched it and froze it. They had like the directory signs on the wall. You still had your name on it, or Mike's name on it, sorry, and Connie's name on it. And so we were joking, like, did they take that down and put it in storage? And then 20, how many years later, that some set designer that had no idea of the previous cast and just put it up on the wall, and like, but it was clear as day that it had Mike Cutter's name and Connie's name. And then the next season, they wound up putting Nolan, Hugh's character's name, but they still have Connie's name. We can't figure out why. And so
I
I just like,
don't know.
they have to actress, put her character's name on it. But yeah, but
That is probably what happened, you know.
yeah,
I mean, the way that ended was quite a shock for all of us. We did
yeah,
not, when our season ended, we did not expect it to happen.
yeah.
All our stuff was still in the dressing rooms. I was
Wow.
in the UK when I got the call, and it was a surprise. It was some sort of standoff between Dick Wolf and the head of NBC at the time, because Dick had done a LA version of the show. So they had two Law and Orders running then, as well as
They have
SVU.
three with
And
SVU, right?
yeah, and so anyway, it was one of those moments where everyone was like, "What? What? Oh, okay." And it was all over all of a sudden. So it was quite a shock. Yeah.
All right, Jeanette's got a couple more, but thank you for that.
Yeah,
That's
thank
a
you.
lot, Lauren, what a fan that I am. I appreciate that.
Barbara also wanted to know do you have any plans for stage work on Broadway or off Broadway in the near future?
No, there's such a dear question and a tricky one because never say never. Um, but I haven't been on stage since 2016. I did a tryout of a show in San Diego, and it was a bit like walking through fire going back on stage because it's a bit like as a gymnast or an athlete. It's a certain set of muscles for theater, and you have to keep using them. So I know that when I go back again, it's going to be a big test. I just got asked this year to do three plays in the UK of all places, out of nowhere. And they were lovely venues, and they were wonderful plays, actually. I just didn't feel the time was right. So I'm being vague because part of me says, oh, I probably won't do that again. But it was always my first love, and I I have enjoyed it. I just know it takes a lot, and it takes a lot, and you got to be very committed to do a run of a show. And I think if the right thing came along and it was maybe the right sort of combination of people and director and talent, and also not a run that goes on forever, because I don't think I could do one of those. I think I could do maybe 3 months, but no plans. So I'm sort of leaving it to the universe at this point. I have written a play which I am still working on, but I've written a play and it's a bit of an experiment. And I would quite like to see if that could have some legs, but not with necessarily me in it.
Well, you kind of already answered the next question from Amanda M. She's from England.
Oh,
She wants to know what type of play would appeal to you, and would you also be interested in working on stage back in the UK?
well, yeah, I would be. I mean, the thing with theatre, just to be brutally honest, is it doesn't pay you very well. So you've got to really, really want to do it and love to be there. And these shows that I could have done in the UK, I probably would have just about broken even if I
Yeah.
just about, or maybe, I'd have ended up forking out a bit. Um, I would go wherever the right project is, to be honest. And what was this first part of the question? The second one was about UK. What was the first part?
What type of play would appeal to you?
I've always loved theatre that's very raw and stripped down and essential, kind of guerrilla theatre. Uh, there was a play when I was at drama school called Was I Albert, and it was two guys from South Africa telling the whole story of apartheid, and they did it just the two of them on stage creating everything. So if they wanted to be a helicopter, they just made a helicopter, and when they were on TV, they just got a cardboard box and they stuck their head through TV. And it was just so, I love it when, it's a bit like the theater can be like as children when we just suspend our disbelief and we just believe what's in front of us. And I think it's magical. And human beings can create almost anything through words, through movement, and through sound. So the theater is a magical place. And so I suppose I'm saying I love that kind of theater. And there aren't that many examples of it, but I'm the playwrights I've loved, Tennessee Williams. I was so happy to do the Glass Menagerie, and then I have always held King Lear as one of the greatest plays ever written, and I got to do it at the RSC with Ray Fiennes, and John Wood was Lear, and I've always thought maybe one day when I get really kind of old and I could grow a long beard, maybe I could have a stab at Lear. It's very ambitious, but the play's been with me since I was a kid. I've
Yeah.
sort of studied it at school. I've been in it. I've seen it many times. I've done workshops on it. It's a fascinating piece of drama, and it's so essential to all of life and nature and growing old and what's of value. And it brings so many things up. It's not an easy play and it can be deathly boring, but it can also be very vital. So I suppose I'm saying it's coming out on this. I have a secret sort of desire to maybe do some version of Lear one day.
You put it in the universe, so
I
who
put it in
knows?
the universe. It's gone out.
There you are.
Blow winds and crack your cheeks. Speak fire, spout rain. Yeah.
There you go.
All right. I will hand this back to Cindy so she can ask her questions.
Thanks, Jeanette. This is one of my questions. So, Linus, you have a great ear for accents. Is that something that comes naturally to you, or is it something you train for? And how do you prepare for a role that requires you to use an accent that not yours?
I suppose, as a kid, I like to play around and pretend to be other people and mimic people. And I suppose I had a facility for it. But often when you get a role and working in a different accent, it's an added layer of complexity, which either, really supports the character, or sometimes you feel like I'm just doing this accent and it's not really embodied in the physicality. So I work quite hard at it, to be
Mm.
honest. I've done everything, voice coaches, listening to people, having recordings. But then at the end of the day, I don't want to be caught up in it. I don't want to be listening to myself. The art of acting, or as far as I've understood it at this point anyway, is to kind of be present in the moment, engaged and alive, and if you're just listening to yourself, then you're not really doing that. So I've had, like, when I played Robert Kennedy, I remember working really hard, listening, but then I thought at the end of the day, I've got to nail it in a few spots, especially when I was recreating his speeches. I need to get
Yeah.
it dead right. And I need to almost just mimic him. But then when it comes to the scenes where he's arguing with his brother or whatever, and he's in real time, I don't want to be worried about it. If I
Yeah.
slip up, it doesn't matter. I'll be forgiven, kind of thing. And then, the other answer to this question is I tried the kind of method acting thing of staying in the accent.
Yeah.
I tried it on Law and Order. I
Yeah.
lasted half a day. Because I feel like such a fraud. I'm standing
Yeah.
at the craft service going, "Hey, how you doing?" And, just like, that's not who I am. So I thought it's better that I just really know my stuff and I'm ready to go when the camera rolls, and I'm not holding on to it. But yeah, a lot of prep goes in. And I think, to be fair, I think I've not always been perfect, but I think I get forgiven. Because if you commit, sometimes it doesn't really matter.
Right.
And I think all our accents are more, it's very interesting what's happening to all of us now. Accents are morphing, and the transatlantic sound, and we're all such a mishmash of sounds. But
Yeah.
I enjoy that. I enjoy
Yeah.
that part. And I'm saying more than I probably should, but the last thing I'll say is, as an English actor who did a lot of classical work and working what they call RP, received pronunciation, which is, I suppose, what I roughly speak. Sometimes for me, the American accent was actually quite liberating. So I remember doing it at drama school and feeling, oh, I'm actually freer in this. And then I remember doing Glass Menagerie, and I struggled a lot. And I did that in the UK. I struggled a lot to get there. But once I was in it, it kind of let me let go more. So it's no accident that I've made America my home and I feel at home here. And it's not that I don't love the UK, I do. But I think there's something, maybe a past life, who knows, but I'm connected to an American sensibility. And I suppose the accent resonates for me in a way that is actually quite useful. So that's,
There is, like, community out there, and the number of people that didn't realize that you were British in Law
oh,
and Order
Yes.
is astounding. That they're like, wait,
that's
what?
a compliment.
Yeah.
Yes.
I bring it up not just with your, Mike Cutter was great, but the movie the sniper movie, Shot Through the Heart.
Oh my God, you're going back
And
years. Yes.
you played someone from Yugoslavia, I think.
Former Yugoslavia. Yeah. Yeah.
Former Yugoslavia. So I think I watched that on YouTube and was reading the comments, and
Right.
someone who's from there said his accent was so dead on
Right.
that he had no idea that you actually weren't from there. Like,
Oh,
so when you hear something like that from someone who has, that
yes.
accent, I'm like, wow.
Well, with that movie in particular, I not only, I mean, we were kind of just doing an approximation of best we could of,
Right.
we were supposedly, we should have been speaking Croatian or, Serbian
Mhm.
or what have you, but so we were kind of making it up a little bit, but I did get to work with the character I played, and
Oh, cool.
he taught me to shoot. I mean,
Yeah.
he actually taught me, the first time I had a rifle for that job was with him. And it was very interesting because I got to study him and ask him questions because he lived through that ordeal. And then I was playing him. It's another one of those moments, actually. I remember this very clearly because we shot um, a tiny little bit in Sarajevo. But then we actually shot the majority of the movie in not in Prague, in Budapest. And we used an old Russian army barracks just outside of the city of Budapest. And therefore it was abandoned place. And we made it look like a little bit of Sarajevo and then systematically blew it up over a period of days. And I remember one day we were out and there were burning tires and there was this sort of hell of war. And I just had one of those little moments where it was suddenly very real. And you thought, my God, this is what it was really like. And I'm just in the pretend world.
Yeah.
And you suddenly got a little shudder of, oh my God, I'm so grateful yet again that I get to go to a nice hotel and wake up and do this again tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
But actually, you were in the fog of war just for a moment. You got a glimpse of it, you know. But yeah, that was an interesting drama, a very interesting piece.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. Our next question is from Alicia S. from Worcester, Mass. Of all the different roles you've played, what was your favorite and why? And is there a type of role you haven't played yet that you would like to? It's kind of similar to what you talked about earlier. Yeah, I know Sophie's choice, but no.
Yeah. I've answered the type of role thing. Although just to say, you know, I have actually never played. I played a policeman once. I did actually. No, I did in the UK. I played a corrupt policeman in a show. Yeah, I did.
Yes.
Kidnapped too.
Yeah, kidnapped. Yeah, well, you were kidnapped.
Say that again.
Kidnapped.
In Kidnapped.
You were a detective.
Thank you for reminding me. I was a detective. I was another corrupt detective in that.
You were a bad man.
Well, maybe I'm saying I want to play a non-corrupt.
A good one. You want to play a good one. All right,
I want to play one of the good guys. What was the first part of the question? What would I like to do?
Of all the different roles you've played, what was your favorite? Why?
It's too hard to pick one.
Yeah.
It's too hard to pick one, and it's different. It's a few things for different reasons. So for the love of just being somewhere, creating with an amazing group of people and a good story in an amazing environment. Before the Rains for me was a dream.
Oh, yeah.
And I just fell in love with Kerala. I've never cried leaving a set before, but I was literally in tears because it's, if you ever, any of you ever get the chance to go, I went a couple of years ago again to visit, but Kerala is just one of those extraordinarily beautiful places on the planet. And the tea plantations in the hills of Munnar are just something to behold. And there's something about the people there and the environment there. So it was just a joy making a movie in a different culture. And the director, Santosh Shivan, he was so much fun. And it was so not like being in the West, you know. He'd sit around smoking beedies, drinking chai in the morning and not shooting, and then say, what are you doing? Come on, let's get going. So it was like, you know, let's get on with the job. And then he'd shoot very quickly. It was like jazz sometimes, you know, we'd be in a scene and suddenly he'd get excited and he'd move the camera quickly. Because sometimes lighting, for those of you who don't know, when you set up a shot, it can take a long time, and on TV they have to work quickly. But this guy he was a genius, and he could move really fast, which for an actor can be great because then you're still in the flow of something. So that job was extraordinary. And then, curiously enough, a role like Mandy, who I nearly didn't do that film because I didn't understand it when I first read it. I didn't get it. I just didn't know what this was. And then I got to meet Panos and I realized that was a whole genre. I'd never been part of anything like that in my life. I normally ran away from jobs like that. And I got what he was doing. And he was sort of doing a treaty or a white paper probably on the male ego. And it was such an incredibly sort of exciting thing to try and pull off that I got creatively caught up in his slipstream. And I loved being part of that film. And that was a surprise. I had no idea that was going to be like that. And then, you know, Law and Order, I loved because I just loved going to work every week and having a great story to tell. I loved Homeland because the writing on Homeland is so good. I say it was like getting into a BMW, you know, the best class BMW, and it just works. You know what I mean? You don't have to try and figure anything out because it all works, and you kind of have to get out of the way and let it play. So anyway, I suppose what I'm saying is I'm a very lucky guy and I've managed to play some great roles and there's a few that I hold dear to my heart. And I suppose the last one I would include in that, or the last two probably, is Priest, because it was my first break and Antonia Bird gave me that role and that opened doors for me that, really was my gateway to the future. And it was such a beautiful story. And then Samuel Taylor Coleridge in Pandemonium by Julian Temple. That was just bonkers. It was so bonkers. It was just mad,
That's a
mad.
fun movie.
It's a fun movie and it was very creative and free. So yeah, I suppose I've been spoiled. I've had too many good ones.
Okay. As follow-up from Alicia, are there any actors, actresses, or directors you would like to work with that you haven't yet?
Oh, there's hundreds, hundreds. I mean, yes. I mean, there's a whole load of people I haven't worked with. So yeah, the list is very long, and we're seeing lots of wonderful talent emerging now as well. So yeah, I mean, of course, there's the Spielbergs and Scorseses and people like that, and then actors. I mean, I'm a huge Brad Pitt fan. I don't know what it is about that guy. I'll watch him do anything, and I love. There's something very kind of unactory about him as well.
Yeah.
He's got all the looks, but he's funny and he's charming and he's self-effacing and he's always good. And so I love his work. I admire Cruz. What Cruz is doing is amazing at that age to be jumping off mountains on motorbikes. I think, he's just brilliant. And there's a lot of great young talent coming up. So it's good. I think what's shifted and what's changed in my time, because I've been doing this for 40 years now. I can't even quite believe that is, the platforms have changed. So the whole studio
Right.
system is shifting and I'm sort of witnessing that and I don't quite know what to make of it. It seems like we're in a golden age of storytelling, but at the same time, we're losing a little bit of the love of the cinema. And, I was glad for Barbie and Oppenheimer last year to kind of
Yeah.
give it a boost. But yeah, I don't know where all that's going at the moment. But my love is cinema, you see. I suppose I watch a lot of TV, but I love cinema. And my
Yeah.
wife and I have written a movie that we are in the process of trying to get it made. And unfortunately, we wrote something that we're very passionate about, and it's quite expensive because it's a period piece. So we are in the process now of finding out how to get something like that funded. And I think there is a way. There is a way. So we will get it made, but it's quite a journey. And I've been on projects where I've watched people, it's their labor of love, and it's been 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, carrying this project so close to their heart, and then they get to make it, and suddenly it can just disappear on a
Yeah.
platform somewhere, and just a few people see it. So that kind of scares me a little bit because when I started in the industry, if you had a movie out, everybody saw it. If you had a TV show out on a Sunday or a Saturday night, everybody, or at least half the country in the UK would have seen it.
Yeah.
And now we are all just like, we don't know what to watch. There's too much to keep up with.
I agree. I think the pandemic had a lot to do with that. And the movies now to get people in are like the Marvel types and whatever. And I'm like, until I saw Stripes was on TV the other day. And I'm like, that was the type of movie I would go to the theater for, like the comedies.
Stripes, yeah, yeah, true.
Midnight Run with Robert De
Oh,
Niro and
I
Charles Grodin.
love
Like they
Midnight
don't make
Run
movies like that. And if they do, they're on like Amazon Prime or
on Netflix.
Netflix, which I don't mind, but it's like that was an event. You went to a movie like that and
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
just like fun and well written and stuff. And now it's all.
Well, I kind of hope that there's a little bit of a new movement for cinema finding its way again because I find these multiplexes so soulless. You could be sitting in a car park with a carpet in it, to be honest. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
sort of. Whereas I was over in the UK recently, and they have I've forgotten the name of the chain now. Oh, Everyman, because I used to go to the Everyman as a kid, but they've taken over some cinemas and they've made it like an experience. You go there, you can have coffee, you can have a drink afterwards. They do Q&As. They curate a really interesting number of films. They have these nice seats, so so it makes it a special thing. You're going,
Yeah.
it's a special night out again. And I want that back. And I will make the effort if there's that. I don't want to sit in a grotty with other people's popcorn all around me.
Yeah. Sticky floors.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope that's coming back. And there seems to be a little bit of a movement away from the studios now as well. I mean, there are some interesting, like we're finding this out for the funding for our movie. There are some other funds emerging to tell stories of hope, of light, of faith, of, the things that we kind of need right now, and we don't need another dystopian horror.
Yeah.
So I think storytelling, it just keeps happening. The forms keep shifting, from the spoken word to radio to books to TV to blockbuster to Netflix to cinema. It's all morphing, but the fact is, we are storytelling beings. We need stories and we live by stories. They're essential to who we are. And I think, that's not going to stop. It's just fascinating to see now, where are the stories going to go and where are they going to find their homes? How are we going to digest them? Very interesting time.
There's still a lot of stories to tell. I really enjoyed Being Dead, for instance. That's an extraordinary story, and you don't see anything like that
That's
being
it.
made.
Yeah, that's true. And that's an example of somebody who really just slaved away to tell that story. And eventually I just signed on to do it when it was a sort of $3 million film. And it ended up being a micro budget film. I stayed on it and I managed to get Beth to do it, which was great. But, that was a labor of love for that guy. And I agree with you. I thought it was a very unique script and a unique way of telling a story. I wish he'd had more money to do it the way he really wanted to do it. And that's where, film has a limitation with a budget. It really is only a certain amount of things you can do. Some low budget films really work, but you have to be really smart to
Yeah.
make them. Yeah.
Okay, back to the questions. Jennifer from Richmond, Virginia, who would also ask the same question about actors and actresses, directors you'd like to work with, has a question. What kind of music are you into now?
Oh gosh, I like quite a wide variety of music, and I will go back to the 90s and 80s quite a bit. Like Tears for Fears and bands like that, and Duran Duran even and stuff like that. But I will recently, I'm looking at doing a piece about the hippie movement, so I'm going back into stuff like the Grateful Dead and Cream and Simon Garfunkel, and a lot of 60s stuff is just coming back into my life that I was aware of as a kid. So I tend to sort of surf around a little bit. And then, I loved some of the big anthem songs. I was into Queen and U2 and Seal but I suppose a lot of 90s stuff, even Prefab Sprout and all kinds of things. And then I will go for a bit of classical every now and again. My father-in-law, bless him, who died some years ago, he was the curator of Elgar's Birthplace Museum in Worcester, England.
Wow.
So you go visit him a lot, and I would listen to a lot of Elgar because of him, and so I fell in love with Elgar. But yeah, I'm quite eclectic, I suppose. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to hand this back to Jeanette for a few more questions.
Okay.
Okay, Linda S. from Rome. I always forget how to say this now. Roermond in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
She wants to know, did you enjoy doing the Welcome to Valhalla convention? And do you have any plans to do them in the future as well, or any other conventions? And she says she knows Germany has a Vikings Con every year.
Oh, well, yes, I did enjoy that event. I wasn't going to go. I've never done one of those things before, but Clive Standen, who plays Rollo in Vikings, he kind of contacted a lot of us personally and said, look, come and do this. It's going to be different from your average Comic-Con because it's just going to be for Vikings. We're going to make it fun. We're going to engage with people. We're going to do this feast and celebrate his birthday. And I thought, what the hell? It sounds wonderful. And it's going to be a reunion. And it was, it really was 2 days hanging out with a lot of old friends. It was stinking hot. So it was quite something. There's a lot of people dressed up in leather and all that. But
Yeah. Oh,
I was genuinely very touched by the event because it just reminded me, how much a show can mean to somebody. And there were people there that Vikings meant so much to them and had
Yeah.
inspired them. And not just as a fun thing, there was one guy in particular, it kind of helped him through his health journey. He needed to be strong and he sort of latched onto Vikings as the way to see him through. And he knew the show inside out. So to see people's passion for something you've been a part of, how could it not be gratifying and enjoyable? It was delightful. And the answer is yes, I would do another one. And we've heard that the show is very big in South America.
Oh, wow.
So I've always wanted to go to South America.
There you go.
right. Well said.
So if I'm not going to get a movie to take me there, maybe we could do a
Yeah.
little road show down there. But yes, I would go back to Germany and it was delightful. And I'm so glad I did it. Although I did come away with COVID.
Oh, no.
Again. Oh, geez, really?
It,
Oh,
it ended up being a super spreader event, I think. So yeah,
God.
No.
Oh, I was with Jeanette and I were joking. I go, they need to do a Law and Order con.
they do.
It would be like 7 days long because there's like 5 or 6 or 7 different shows. So you
Yeah,
go to New York and you could fly in and out. I'm like, I'll help run it. Oh, okay. Who do I talk to about that? Anyway,
that'd be
all right, go ahead,
interesting.
Jeanette. Next question.
Our next question is from Uta from Germany,
Hmm.
and she would like to know how long have you been studying Telehard?
Hey, hard.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't speak French.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not an easy name to say. In fact,
No.
the title of our movie is called Mr. Taya, because one of the parts of the story is we tell the story of Jean Houston, who was 14 years old when she met Teilhard de Chardin, the French Jesuit priest and scientist, and she met him in Central Park. She actually knocked him over. She was running with her dog, and she knocked this old man over, and they sparked up this conversation that actually went on for a year between the two of them. He would meet her in the park once a week, and he would share all of his, I suppose, musings on life, the universe, evolution, God, all of it. And she could never say his name. And
Neither can I.
she called him Mr. Taya. So we've called our movie Mr. Taya. And how long have I been studying him? Probably from 2007.
Oh,
A
wow.
friend of mine came to me with a book called The Jesuit and the Skull by Amir Axel, and it told the story of this French Jesuit priest in China going on this expedition to find the missing link in the chain of human evolution. And it was a very exotic, rich story. And I thought, wow. And then I read more about his life and I thought, wow, this is an epic movie. And we started breaking it down, I suppose, in about 2013, seriously. About 10 years ago, we started to break down the story and learning more about him. And then it took us 2.5 years in earnest to write the script, and we finished that in 2018. And we were just getting moving with the project when the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
Then, we took even more time after it, and now we've sort of positioned it, and we're changing a few things, and we have a producer out of the UK. So that's a good thing, a very good producer. And we're just reaching out today to someone. So the ball is rolling on the project. I'm very proud of the script. Very proud because, and my wife, Roz, should take a lot of credit for it because we kind of took different aspects of the story, but she was the one that could have galvanized it all together. And it's a story told through multiple layers of time. Because I've always loved movies where you feel you've experienced a whole lifetime in one go. There's something
Right.
about that for me. I love those movies. You like Gandhi when with Ben Kingsley when that came out, it was like, wow, you really had experienced a whole lifetime in the space of 2.5 hours. And I really wanted that feeling because the metaphor of the movie is it's one lifetime, but it's also one day that he spends in Central Park with this young girl. And
Right.
then the metaphor of one breath that everything's in one moment. So it's one lifetime, one day, one moment. So his whole life comes together at the end of the movie in one moment. And we had to build it. To structure it was really hard. And I have so much respect for writers. And I have even more now that I'm trying to be one,
Yeah.
because to me, it's one of the greatest skills. It's one of the greatest, as an actor, when you're given good writing, oh my God, you know, I say NAR, no acting required. Because
Right.
when it's really well told, well, I'm not saying anybody could do it because casting makes a huge difference, but if the story is told in the right way, almost anybody can pull it off because you'll follow it. And you will know that means that's a significant turning point. That's a significant turning point. So I'm very, very proud of our script. It's just as I say, what we did was not smart in terms of writing something that's very ambitious for a first project. So we've actually stepped away as directors now. We wanted to direct it, but we've realized that that's just too much to ask. We probably should do a smaller project as a first project. I'm working on something almost for fun with a friend of mine as a short film that we might do. But for this one, we need to hand it over to somebody who's got that skill and has
It,
proved themselves, because it's a lot of money. It's a lot
yeah.
of money.
But it sounds like a very interesting story from what I've read about it. After I learned you were working on that, I sort of did my own research
Oh,
and
bless you.
looked into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I just feel, not to get too philosophical as we wrap up here, but, we're living in challenging times. And I think one of the biggest things we need is kind of a faith in the future, and not so much in whether you believe in God or, all the spiritual side, but it is actually faith in humanity and where we're going. And there's a lot of bad news out there, and there's a lot of misinformation, and we're all getting very confused, and it's all pretty scary. And I think for the next generation, we wanted this to tell this story because he died in 1954 and he was pointing the way forward then, and he lived through two world wars.
Right.
He was on the front line in the First World War, and he lived through the second one, and he saw it all, and yet he still had this hope and faith in humanity and our future and our ability to come through and to grow together. And I just thought this story, because it's not preachy, we're not telling a preachy story, it's just his story. And it's about an old man, if you like, trying to reclaim his own faith at the end of his life. And it feels very poignant. And I think now, funnily enough, I think the movie is more ready than it was 6 years ago. I think the world is more ready for it, and it's actually a better time to tell it now.
That's
So,
good.
so wish us well on this project.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Um, since
Go
we are
ahead.
getting to the end, I think Cindy has a question she wanted to ask you about Priest, actually.
Ooh, right.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, it's more, so, we lost the great Tom Wilkinson at the end of the year last year. And having watched Priest, I know how close you worked with him on that. Can you share
Yeah.
any good stories from filming with him? He seems like a
Can do.
wonderful, wonderful guy. He's in so many things.
I can tell you stories about Tom because I loved him dearly. I got to work with him twice, actually. We did a movie about where Albert Finney played Churchill. And what I actually, Tom kind of taught me a lesson in a way, and because we're actually very different actors. And I remember we were waiting. I think it was the scene where we go knocking on people's doors, of introducing ourselves as the local priests, and then we end up finding these Jehovah's Witnesses who pull us in. But I was sitting in the van and reading my script, like studying, and Tom was like, why what are you bothering with that for? We're just knocking on a door. And I suppose I've always been a bit studious and I like to think things through a lot. And he was kind of right, and he had a certain freedom to him so on the second project we did, I don't think he even did any historical research on his character. And he was talking to me and he said, I think my character walks a little bit like this. And he came up with this walk in the moment. And then we shot and he did it. And it was like, he's very alive and spontaneous and very dry and funny. And I really admired that about him. And it sort of came through in his performances, I think, that there was a kind of irreverence a little bit.
Yeah.
And he was a genius at what he did. He was so powerful. So thank you for asking that question and for having us all remember the great Tom Wilkinson, because truly
I
great.
know we're coming up on time, but we have one more question from another fan, and then Jeanette and I have one final question for you. So Mary Jo from Pittsburgh asks, how does it feel knowing you have such an avid fan base and Facebook group that followed your career with such enthusiasm?
Well, that's a beautiful question, and I'm sorry I haven't really spoken to it earlier because I'm actually very touched by it. I'm very moved that that even exists, and I want to thank you all for the care and attention and the fact that you'd even spend the time because you like what I've done. It means a lot because as an actor, I suppose you've only got really the feedback or the response to what you do. Or I mean, I suppose some actors are good at just walking away and you do it and you let it go. And I have not engaged in social media, as I said earlier, but knowing that there's a group of people out there that still want to see me do my thing, is wonderful. And I'm very grateful to all of you and especially to you two for making this happen. And maybe, periodically we can do something like this and have more people or whatever. I mean,
Sure.
I don't think I'll ever be one to be getting on social media and tweeting or Xing or Instagram and all that. I find texting and email is way enough. And
Yes.
obviously I've got Messenger now. I do a bit of Messenger, but
Yeah.
when I do WhatsApp, I'm sorry, I do WhatsApp. But I am very, very grateful and very touched. So thank you all.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
So Jeanette and I have one final question for you. So we noticed a new entry on your IMDb page with a short film called The Skin of the Water. So what can you tell us about it? What is your role in it? And more importantly, when and how will we be able to see it?
Oh, yeah, amazing how quickly these things go on. Okay, so Skin of the Water is a short movie that really is, I suppose, a treatment for a longer movie that a friend of mine's daughter, a friend of mine I went to drama school with, her daughter wrote it with her friend. And it's about two hippie chicks in the 70s on the run from a cult. And they're musicians, they're singers, because both these girls are singers and they're very, very talented singers. So they've written themselves a vehicle to, I think, tell a story they want to tell, but also for them to sing in the movie. And the idea is they go on a kind of road trip across America from California to New York to sort of set themselves free of this. And I play a guy who was in the cult who they run to for help. And I run a bar, and I'm the first person they run to. And they asked me a few years ago if I would do this. And I don't normally do things like this, but I read it and I thought, do you know what? I think they've written something really cool. And it's something that I actually, for a weird reason, understand a little bit about it. And I could help them even with a little bit. And so I said, sure, if you get the money together, I'll come and do it. And it took them a while, but eventually they called me up this spring, and said, we've got the money. Will you come and do it? So I said, sure. And I introduced them to a young woman that I'd met on Billy the Kid called Britt Burke. She's a theater director and she was wanting to get into movies. And I suggested, I don't know, you're looking for a director. Who knows? Maybe she could do it. And they liked Britt. And she came over and we shot it in 3 days. And
Short film.
it's a short film. I mean, it's going to be about a 20-minute film, probably.
Yeah.
And I don't know when we're going to see it because they haven't edited it yet. So they've still got to cut it together. And who knows how these things work out. But I was very happy. Sometimes, I remember, do you know an actor called Tim Spall? He's a wonderful English actor. He played Mr. Turner in the movie about the painter Turner. He's turned up in lots of English comedies. He's a sort of great English actor. And I worked with Tim, and he said, sometimes you do you do a job for money. Sometimes you do a job for the pure creative joy of the role. And sometimes you do it for mates. And this was a little bit of the mates thing.
Yeah.
And there was a creative thing. So I learned from him that one, and it's true. So you can't be too precious. And so let's see. But I was very proud of them for getting it together because they had to produce it as well and go through all of the drama of, getting the money and they had a proper crew, proper set, and they had proper location, and they did it properly. So we'll see.
Jeanette was able to track down some movie stills. So we
Yes, I suppose I will mention to them that people are eager to know.
Yes.
Please do. Okay, well, that's pretty much it. I think all that we have.
Oh,
This was a real treat. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm so
Yes,
glad we
thank
were
you.
able to get it worked out. We need to drag Tyler
oh,
into one of these and do one on a movie that has not come out yet that we won't. Oh,
I think we could
but
mention the Dresden Sun. We've talked about it before.
we have.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's happening with the Dresden Sun. I just know that Michael Ryan, who wrote it and directed it and produced it, is spending a lot of time getting the special effects right,
Yeah.
getting it how he really wants to see it. And he doesn't have a huge budget. He had a healthy budget, but for the scale of the movie he's trying to make, and is a very ambitious project. So I wish them well. And as soon as I
Yeah.
have any news, I'll let you know because
Well, now you know how to get in touch with us. So,
Yes.
yes, I
you know,
do. I
Thank
any
do.
you.
other future work that you have coming down the pike, and if you let us
I
a little bit
don't
about
at the
Law and Order
moment.
when you find out,
I will let you know
that's all
if
I live for,
that's going
just
to
so you know.
happen. I will let you know.
Much appreciated.
But no, I don't. I'm working. I'm writing at the moment. I won't tell you. This is too early to talk about. But I have the rights to a book that we met the author of this, and it's about the hippie movement, and I'm really interested in that era. And the book is a great premise for a TV series. So I'm just playing at the moment with seeing if I can break it down into a show
Very
and see if
cool.
it's going to work. So I'm working on that. And as I say, I've been offered theatre, which is not really what I want to do right now. And it's a little quiet right now, which I'm just making the most of enjoying the quiet time because often in my business, it's either feast or famine. There's either too much or not enough. And I'm enjoying watching the US Open, which is
Oh,
going to be a
yes.
Yes,
big match tonight. So,
yes, very good.
It's good. We'll
Okay,
let you
so
go
again,
watch it.
let
but
you go
thank you
watch it.
both. And thank you, everyone. And let's stay in touch. And if
Absolutely.
there's anything we can do in the future, we've probably talked about it all now. So
You know,
we have to create new news for the future.
well, this might be get new questions from more people. So
Sure. Sure. We could go another layer another time.
absolutely. All right.
Thank
Thank you
you.
again.
Bless you.
Really
Thank you very
appreciate it.
much.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye bye.